So there was an article that dropped about Capcom. GOG has the original Resident Evils 1, 2, and 3 available on their store DRM free. And although I don't have them on there, I do have these games on the PlayStation 5. Capcom initially didn't see the point in doing this because they had the remakes. Now, this is a problem going on with gaming and the industry and even the players. People have this idea that video games are just, I guess, technology alone and not pieces of art. You cannot just remake a game and then say, well, this remake takes over the original. I'm currently playing through Resident Evil 1, and I do have Resident Evil 1 remake. I've only played the remake a little bit, and one day I'll sit down and thoroughly play it. But once I came across, I forgot the character's name, it's some lady that walks around the mansion, and all of that burning of the zombies on the ground, I said I wasn't into this because I had beaten Resident Evil 1, at least on Chris's campaign back in the day, never beat Jill's campaign, and I preferred that way much more because I just felt that Resident Evil 1 remake looked better. Obviously, it came out later, but the added additions just wasn't my thing. Maybe one day I'll play it beginning to end and realize that I do like it, but still I prefer the original as is now. Resident Evil 2, I never played the original outside of briefly. I played a little bit, but I never really got into it. I beat the remake. The remake was fun, but everyone tells me that the original one had a lot of extra content that the remake doesn't have. You can play through the game multiple different ways with the different characters and get different outcomes, which is not in the remake. Resident Evil 3, everyone complained that is so far from the original, and the remake is nowhere near as good. There's a lot of games that's like that. Dead Rising, I just got the remake of that game, and I love Dead Rising. And I have the remastered version, which for the most part, as far as I can tell, is just the 360 version, but in higher definition and with some higher resolution and frame rate. So I guess if you want to say something like that replaces an original, I guess you could say that, but someone might prefer playing it at 720p on the Xbox 360. I don't think that game was 720p. It might have been lower than that. But now that I'm playing the remake or remaster, it's called Deluxe Remaster, it's a remake of Dead Rising, I'm realizing it looks nicer. It looks cool, but the original voice actor isn't here. I think the guy that got here is cool, but it's not the original voice actor. They removed some of the ways the camera worked. Like if you take pictures of certain zombies, like you don't get like the erotica thing popping up anymore, which I think is lame. There's probably other changes I don't know of. So one day Capcom just says the original Dead Rising, never release it again because we have the remake version. I'm like, listen, the remake seems cool so far, but no. The original has content that the remake doesn't even have, and the only reason they removed it from what I could tell is they were trying to be politically correct, which doesn't even make sense because if you know anything about that game or Capcom in general, they're not very politically correct when it comes to sexual content, so why would they change it here? I don't know. But the point is that outside of a situation where a developer just remasters a game and doesn't alter anything, they just make it look sharper and run better, I wouldn't say that any game can just be replaced, and even then, if someone wants to play the worst version, that's their business. When it comes to replacing games, it does get a little bit tricky because when you think about patches, there are plenty of games where they fundamentally changed how the game was when they patched it. Now, this is typically a multiplayer game that I'm talking about. I can't think of too many single player games where a patch just changed the entire game. Outside of probably No Man's Sky, but that's only been for the better for most people. Anything you liked about No Man's Sky when it first came out, it's still there. It's just way more stuff to do. So unless you just want the game with less content, there's no reason to say, I want to play the original No Man's Sky Day 1 edition. It's just silly because all that content is still there. It's just you got more stuff to do now. I don't know. I don't think that we should replace games with updated versions of games. I think updated versions of games are fine. Remakes are fine. Re-releases are fine. You could replay League or whatever it's called. That's coming out. Well, it's already out, but I'm getting it in December when the physical release drops. I have that on Switch. My plan is before I get it in December, I want to beat it and talk about it on my channel. I never got around to beating the original one, and I heard that the original one sucked. But I also hear people saying the new remake is better, but it took away things that the original had that were good, and I want to know the difference between the two. Situations like these are priceless. Like to be able to say I have two different versions of the same game and hopefully you like them. You're able to say I have two different experiences surrounded by the general premise of a game I enjoy. I just beat Pac-Man World 2 Repack. I never got around to really playing much of the original Pac-Man World 2, but some people might prefer the original. Some people might like both for their own individual reasons. Resident Evil 4, I like Resident Evil 4, the original one, and I like the remake, and they're not the same. Story is pretty much similar, but there's a lot of things that 4 had that the remake does not have, or at least some of it comes back in 8 as DLC, which I haven't played yet. But the overall experience isn't just a one-to-one thing. Even if you go to something like the Wii version of Resident Evil 4, which is my favorite version because of the motion controls, it's still not the definitive version, if you want to say that. It doesn't have the GameCube cutscenes. We can go on and on and on about how a lot of games don't have like perfect additions. I haven't gotten around to buying Tony Hawk 3 plus 4, but I have the original 3 and 4, right? What if I like 3 plus 4 for its own reasons, and I still like the original for their uniqueness? The original Pro Skater 4 had big levels that you can explore and do missions at your leisure, but now in the remake, it's all timed. What if I like both versions? I don't think to say that one version is superior than the other. I mean, maybe it will be in my opinion once I get to play them, but what if I like both? People don't consider that. And my favorite example of replacing games has to be Rockstar with the definitive edition of GTA 3 Vice City and San Andreas. Thankfully, I bought those games digitally on the PS4 and they still work on PS5. You can't buy them anymore on PS5 for whatever reason, but you can still buy the definitive edition. Now, I like the definitive edition. Is it as good as the originals? No, because even after they fixed it and stuff like that, it's still some things about it just look clunky and weird. But I do like that it has more NPC diversity. I do like that the game does look nicer in a certain way, like a more modern way. But I still think the original games are great. Guess what? I have both of them, but not even entirely of that, because I don't have the original Vice City digitally. I don't have the Vice City where it has the Michael Jackson music in it, unless you want to count the PC version I have that got modded back down to the original version. I have that. But again, stuff like that, when you start getting into patch versions and stuff, that's when we get a little real tricky. But just keeping it on official releases and not talking about patches, this is why we need to make sure that these corporations understand that no, you cannot just replace classics. You can't just replace really any game, because some game is going to be someone else's favorite and some game's going to be someone else's nightmares. It just depends. I think that we got to be reasonable. Games that we know that didn't sell well, that didn't do well, they're probably never going to get remade or re-released anyway. Or if they do, you better be happy you got it at all, because it didn't move units. It's still a business at the end of the day. But it just doesn't make sense when you think about it. If this is a business and the whole point is to sell games, Capcom saying we have better versions of these games already available, and GOG simply, from what I'm understanding, the assets and everything dealing with Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3 on PC just existed already. Maybe they had to do minimal work to get them running on modern day hardware, but outside of that, the game is already done. You just need to port it, and the port job probably wasn't difficult. The fact that Capcom was like, no, from an artistic standpoint, they said no, not from a business standpoint. That's where it gets weird. These are still businesses, and if a group of people are saying, hey, we will buy this from you, and if that company can say, okay, well, crunch some numbers, the cost it would take to port it is next to nothing, we could probably make profit off this in the long run, let's just do it anyway. They were saying initially no, they had to be convinced, because this is where, again, gaming is an art form. It is also a business, but this is where the artist is trying to tell the people enjoying the art what they should be playing. So when people say remakes are preserving things, that doesn't really work out too well. I just reviewed not only Metal Gear Solid 3, the quote unquote original, I also did Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, the remake. Now, I like both, but the reason I said quote unquote in the original, because that's not the original. It is the HD version, which is based off of the subsistence version, which is not the original. It's an updated version of Metal Gear Solid 3, and it does not have all the content of the original PS2 version. The remake has almost all the content that every version had, but it's still almost all the content. But it has different visuals, which I say look nice. But if you look at the original game, I talk about in my videos, you should watch them to see them in further detail. I think the original game or the original PS2 graphics look better than the PS3. I mean, not PS3, the PS5 version's graphics. Again, if Konami, thankfully Konami at least released some version of the original one and this remake, instead of saying you're only getting the remake, it replaces everything. Atlas released Persona 3 Portable and Persona 4 Golden. Then they remade Persona 3, and now they're about to remake Persona 4. It would be stupid if they said, because Persona 4 Golden not only was like the game for the PS Vita, it like saved, it didn't save the Vita because the Vita was never saved, but it was that one game that if someone said, if you were going to buy a Vita, buy Persona 4 Golden, and that's exactly what I did. That is a very important game to me. It's a great game. It's the game that I say got me really into RPGs. I'm sure the remake would be great. I might like it more than Golden, but I'm glad that I got to play Golden. But even then, Golden's not the original. I know people that say they prefer the original Persona 4 that came on PS2, not the Golden edition, not the Golden version. See how this stuff works? So I'm not being unreasonable here. I'm not saying that a developer is going to say, release every incarnation of a game. But to just outright ignore, like we're talking about Resident Evil 1. Not a Resident Evil, like specifically drop the DualShock edition. We have Resident Evil 1, we want the DualShock edition. No, they said, no, just play the remake. That's weird. That's strange. And it tells me that more than ever, we need more people dumping games online so we can emulate them. And some people don't like emulation. Some people think that's wrong. But games need to be preserved, and we don't preserve games just to say they're in the database somewhere existing and no one uses them. That's a waste of time. We preserve them so people can play them. That is the point. So I'm all for, which is why, although I have a PlayStation 1 emulator, I just bought those games on PS5 because I can. They're available to buy. So as someone who uses emulation, if it's available to buy, I just buy it. I did that with Lollipop Chainsaw. Now, granted, I downloaded the emulated version. I just wanted to see how I played. I played it for 5 minutes. I said, I like this. Bought the remake or the remaster or whatever it's called. And I enjoyed it. So in order to keep games preserved, we got to remind these companies that their opinion ultimately does not matter. Now, we as the gamer have to be reasonable and understand that they're not going to re-release everything. Like, as much as I would like for Capcom to re-release something like Maximo, that probably ain't gonna happen. But, or I would love for God Hand to come back out. Thankfully I got a PS3, I can just buy it there or just emulate it. But maybe that stuff won't happen. Or I love the Def Jam games, but they will have to pay. First of all, EA, I don't even know if they have the license anymore. Def Jam is not even really a good company anymore. They have to pay all those rappers again. And those rappers know their worth now, so they're going to pay a lot of money. So something like that may never get re-released. So all you got is emulation. I don't know. But I just thought this was an interesting conversation. Please let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think Capcom was foolish for what they said? I'm glad they changed their mind. And do you think it's odd that these companies have to be convinced to re-release games? Because just to throw this out here one more time so you can fully understand. We're not talking about GOG saying, Capcom, the code for these games aren't here. They're not, but like there were, what do you call it? Not shovelware. They call it like shareware, freeware. It's when like abandonware. That's what it's called. When a PC game or any type of PC software technically is owned by someone, but the company don't care no more about it. You could find like the original PC version of these games on these sites all the time, and you could just download them, and no one was going to care. Like they own sites that viruses won't even come on your computer. And these companies are just like, nah, just buy the remake. They could probably see if they wanted to get the information, how many people just download the original and never say, it already exists. Just, we could make like some money if we sold it, and then they don't have to go to these weird places and worry about anything else. Nope. They just think that the remakes are better. But that's the gaming industry for you. Good thing we got GOG, because at least they understand some things, and it's DRM free, which means that you can just store that on a hard drive, hopefully a hard drive or your SSD, or even burn on a disk. It doesn't get destroyed. And because it's DRM free, you don't have to worry about an installer, and it just exists. Peace out. Keep gaming. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think games should be preserved? Do you think remakes and remasters just replace the originals? Is there a game that was remade that you enjoy the remake, but you don't think it replaces the original? Or is there a game that you think replaces the original? Let me know in the comments. Peace out. Keep gaming. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the hype button, and I'll see you in the next video.